What's up guys, Dan here for BladeReviews.com. Welcome to my review of the Boker Pipsqueak. Really interesting knife designed by Neil Blackwood and made by Boker in their Solingen, Germany factory. So a genuine Boker and crafted by or designed by a genuine master craftsman and designer. So really cool here. I'm excited about this knife. I've been carrying it actually for quite some time now, a little over 2 months of pretty much daily use and carrying. So I've got a good amount of feedback and information on this knife, and my goal is to share it with you as efficiently as possible and to hopefully have some fun with it as well. So let's dive on in, do some quick specs, and get on with the knife review. The Pipsqueak has an overall length of 6 1/4 inches. It's got a 2 5/8 inch long blade, and it weighs 4.7 ounces. Yes, 4.7 ounces and a sub 3-inch blade. It's definitely not going to be a knife for everybody. I know, if weight's a big concern, then you're probably going to want to pass up on the Pipsqueak, which really is a shame because I found this to be an excellent everyday carry utility knife. That said, the fun in collecting is picking out stuff you like, finding things that work for you, and that excites you as a collector, so you're always more than welcome to your own opinions. But yeah, with that said, let's do a couple size comparisons, get a better feel for this one. First up, I thought it might be fun to compare it with another Blackwood design, and that is this Benchmade Skirmish, which happens to be a very large folding knife, and it gives you a little context. The Pipsqueak is a very small folding knife. We'll further illustrate that with a few more practical kind of size comparisons. First up, a Spyderco Sage 1, and then I've got a Benchmade Mini Griptilian. And even still, the Pipsqueak is shorter than both of these knives. Almost begs the question, is the Pipsqueak enough knife for daily carry and use as your primary blade? For me, that answer, bearing in mind that I've been using knives primarily as utility objects, just as tools, and I live in suburban and urban environments, and live and work in these kinds of environments, and with that in mind, absolutely, it's been a great EDC knife. Let's talk a little bit about the blade, which is a little bulldog of a modified drop point here. And one of the more interesting features of this blade shape is just the sheer amount of edge. It's got a huge belly that sweeps into sort of a gentle recurve here. And for a sub 3-inch blade, man, they really managed to shoehorn a lot of edge into it. So very cool. When you combine that with a relatively thin hollow grind, it makes for an absolutely incredible slicer. If you're going through cardboard or really anything, what happens is the material kind of feeds into here and just get powered through that recurve, and it accelerates a lot of cuts. It makes for a very aggressive cutter and a lot of attitude, both from a visual perspective and also from a performance perspective. A lot of attitude out of this little knife, so I was quite impressed. Another thing that's really interesting is the very unique blade finish. What you've got is just a satin finish on the flat of the blade, but this very unique acid-etched stonewash on the hollow grind and the swedge. Visually, I find it to be very striking, especially when you flip it over and take a look at that stonewashed titanium frame lock, and then just the kind of blasted pocket clip there. It gives a lot of contrast. Really cool, very unique looking knife. The steel is really thick. They started out with a very wide piece of S35VN. It's 4 millimeters thick, and S35VN was a steel that I did not have a ton of experience with before I acquired this knife, and I'll tell you, I'm walking away very impressed with the S35VN on this knife. Out of the box from the factory, came absolutely razor sharp, easily taking the hair off my arm. Carrying and using this one daily for over a month before I decided to break down and finally sharpen it. It was still taking the hair off my arm, although I must admit it had lost its luster a little bit. And I was concerned. I was concerned that because of the recurve and the exaggerated belly, that this might be very difficult to sharpen. And I also wondered how that S35VN would take an edge, and I'm pleased to report that it was not the horror story that I thought it might be. It sharpened up very easily. What you're going to want to do is use a rod-style sharpener. In my case, I used my Spyderco SharpMaker and was able to restore a hair shaving edge with very little effort, surprisingly little effort. So very pleased to report about that. Also, the S35VN is very rust and corrosion resistant. I've been cutting up a lot of citrus. Between you and me, a lot of gin and tonics and such, being the summer months and all, you know, I like a good cocktail, and the EDC knife often gets relegated to cutting up the limes and lemons and stuff. So a lot of acidic fruits, and it walked away unscathed. It absolutely held up phenomenally well. No rust or any corrosion whatsoever. So very pleased with the S35VN. All right, let's talk a little bit about the handle here. What we've got is an olive green canvas micarta handle scale, and that's over a full titanium liner. Then you've got a canvas micarta backspacer, and then of course we've got the aforementioned full titanium frame lock. So nice choice of materials here, really handsome with that dark green and then the stonewashed titanium. All the titanium has been stonewashed on this knife, and it's been really well put together. Minimalist, sort of partial flow-through construction with that partial backspacer and just a couple screws holding everything together. All has been nicely finished, really precise, very, very satisfactory, beyond satisfactory. Excellent build quality on this knife, and I was very pleased to find that. In hand, the Pipsqueak performs really well too, so it doesn't just look good, it actually works, and you're able to get a full grip on the knife, and you've got a nice spot for your thumb here. It's got a little bit of jimping, not terribly aggressive jimping, but for a utility knife, for a daily carry tool, I think it's absolutely adequate. Also, I want to call your attention to this raised backspacer. This is what makes the knife as comfortable as it is. It is a very nice and surprisingly comfortable knife. It is wide, but it does have this titanium frame lock that feels like it could be kind of sharp on some of the corners, but this backspacer creates room in your palm. That's what your hand butts up against, and all the reviews that I've read from right-handed individuals and videos that I've watched, they've all seemed to enjoy the ergonomics. For me as a lefty, I'm going up against the micarta handle scale, and it is extremely comfortable. So great ergonomics for a little knife. Let's talk a bit about the pocket clip, which is interesting because it sort of mimics the silhouette of the open knife there, something you really don't see much of, kind of a unique take on a pocket clip here. Between you and me, personally, not really my first choice for a pocket clip design. It's just a little too different for me, I guess. I'm more of a traditionalist and would prefer something a little more typical, you know, than having this sort of interesting, unique pocket clip. But I have to say, it did grow on me, and as a pocket clip goes, it actually is very functional. You can see it doesn't stick out much, so you don't have to worry about this scratching up the side of your car or anything like that. I still found it to be easy enough to insert and remove from my pants, despite the fact that it doesn't have a huge lip. It's got great retention, if I can get my thumbnail under there, and it does ride fairly deep. So it is a deep carry clip, and it's positioned on the back of the handle. I found it to be very good. It's just sort of, you stick this knife in the pocket and it just stays there wherever you want to situate it. It doesn't move around a lot. Always something that I'm looking for in a pocket clip. Unfortunately, it is right side tip-up carry only, so no options to mount it anywhere else. But, you know, every cloud has a silver lining, and the silver lining is that it's a very nice looking knife, and I'm actually kind of glad that I didn't go ahead and drill a bunch of holes in it. I think it would detract from the overall look of the knife, so, you know, they definitely made a compromise there. But for most people, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. It wasn't a big deal for me, at least. And you could always just take this clip off, and the knife is small enough to where you could have it ride free in your pocket. All right, let's talk a little bit about the deployment and lockup. What we've got here, of course, are a pair of ambidextrous thumb studs. They're easy to get at, and you can flick the knife open without any issue. In addition to that, I find that I typically just put my thumb on the flat of the blade and open it as such, so it's a very smooth deployment. That was one of the first things I noticed, and one of my favorite aspects is just how smooth it is. And that is thanks in part to the use of phosphor bronze and Teflon washers. They've got some pretty thick phosphor bronze washers in there, and if you look really close, little thin pieces of Teflon between the washer and the blade. So you get the speed of deployment of phosphor bronze and the smoothness of Teflon. So really, really nice. And with all that said, with the easy deployment, the detent is excellent. The blade isn't going anywhere. It's not going to open accidentally in your pocket, at least under normal use. It's got a very nice ceramic ball detent, so that's good to see. Lockup is excellent. What we've got here is a 50-50 lockup. And when mine started out, it was at around 25%, and within a couple weeks, it settled into 50%, and has been sticking here ever since. So nice and early. A little blade play developed as the lock settled in. That's to be expected. And what you're going to want to do is just adjust the pivot. I did notice that this pivot has a tendency to back out a little bit. So once the knife breaks in, you may want to consider putting a little Loctite there and just sort of holding it in place with a little bit of Loctite. But for me, not a big deal at all. That pretty much takes us through the entire knife, going over I think everything that I wanted to talk about, at least for the most part. Final thoughts, walking away extremely impressed with the Boker Pipsqueak. It's got great fit and finish, excellent materials, all the stuff you'd expect from a high-end production knife, but it's got a lot of character as well too. Just a cool, sort of chunky, funky looking blade. Very practical if you can get around the 4.7 ounce carry weight and lack of ambidextrous pocket clip and such. But you know, with that out of the way, I still think you've got a very practical knife here, and it's been a lot of fun to carry. It's brought me a lot of joy, just a little, you know, something nice to have in your pocket that's fully functional. And it's just a fun knife to have. So I've definitely enjoyed it and can totally recommend it if you're interested in the design. And if you're looking for something a little different, something out of the ordinary, I would wholeheartedly say take a closer look at the Pipsqueak. I've really, really liked it. So there you go, guys. That is my review. Once again, this is Dan for BladeReviews.com. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, be safe, and I'll be back soon with another knife review.